Ivana, what are you doing here? I had just returned from shopping when I saw a figure standing frozen at the front door. I was so taken aback that I dropped my shopping bags. What about your honeymoon? I came back alone. Upon hearing this, Ivana started to cry. I am Emily, a 58-year-old housewife. My husband is Oswald, who is 60 years old. And this is about my daughter Ivana, who was supposed to be on her honeymoon, but was inexplicably standing at our front door with her suitcase. Hold on, I am totally lost here. For now, I let Ivana inside the house to hear the details. I placed Ivana's pink suitcase by the entrance and ushered her, still sobbing, into the living room. I then set a glass of iced tea on the dining table. Ivana began to sip it cautiously. I slowly began to ask questions, trying to piece the situation together. So, you came back from Hawaii all alone? Yes. She was supposed to be in Hawaii for her honeymoon, just 2 days ago. Why, exactly? I am familiar with her husband Lloyd. He's a courteous man, and as far as I know, he has a significant role in a major company. He seemed very promising, like someone who could provide a stable life. That's why we celebrated their marriage. As Ivana began to speak, I learned a shocking truth. There was another woman there. Excuse me? On their honeymoon? A woman? My voice cracked in disbelief. So we ended up spending time together, all 3 of us. Wait, what? A honeymoon with 3 people? And a woman you didn't even know? Just hearing that made my blood boil. I pulled out my mobile phone, quickly found Lloyd's contact, and hit the call button. Wait, Mom. Ivana tries to stop me with a weak voice, but I totally ignore her. How dare he do this to my Ivana? Unforgivable. My hand holding the phone trembles. After about 3 rings, Lloyd picks up. Hold on, what's the meaning of this? You're hanging out with another woman? I started ranting without even waiting for Lloyd's response. Then, in an extremely bored tone, she's my sister, my actual sister. What are you misunderstanding? What? His actual sister? I don't know where to direct my gaze. Ivana has her head down too. Sister? Your real sister? Yes. There is nothing shady going on. She's the sister who lives in Hawaii and couldn't make it to the wedding because her kid had an ear infection. Oh. So, I have a question too. I can't reach Ivana since you seem to know what's going on here. Is she back with you? While saying this, Lloyd lets out a sigh on the other end of the phone. Women really go off the handle so easily, making a fuss and then fly all the way back to Boston on a whim. Is it the female hormones that make you act so irrationally? Even if I got it a bit wrong, there is no need for that kind of language. That comment was totally insensitive toward women. I am getting pretty steamed. The one who acted on emotion and left is your Ivana. I will be staying in Hawaii as planned for a week. When I get back, I expect a full apology. Please let Ivana know that's the plan. With that, Lloyd hung up abruptly. I really can't wrap my head around the situation. Yeah, me neither, but Mom, you kind of jumped the gun with that phone call before we could get the full story. According to Ivana's explanation, as soon as they arrived in Hawaii, it seems Lloyd's real sister was waiting for them at the hotel. Lloyd told me, so my sister will put you through some special training to see if you're worthy of being my partner. I've never heard of a honeymoon where the groom's sister tags along to give lessons in housekeeping. What? We never talked about this. I wanted to visit the beautiful beaches and Mauna Kea mountain. When Ivana stammered this out, "That's your problem, isn't it?" Ivana felt emotionally shut out. "But you said you wanted to go too." "Once my sister's special training is over, we can go wherever we like. Of course, all three of us. The reason we chose Hawaii, where my sister lives, is precisely for this." Then a woman named Sanaya, the sister, said, "Enough talk. From today, I will be giving you an intense homemaking course. I've been doing this for years. As both a wife and a mom, I want to go all out to help my brother's marriage. Off to my house we go." So it seems this mysterious training started unfolding. "So, what happened once you got to his sister's house?" I found myself parched. I poured more iced tea into my empty glass to encourage the storytelling. Even though Lloyd is usually serious, it was clear from that phone call that he looked down on women, and Ivana as well. Turning a honeymoon into a housekeeping training camp? Hearing this almost made me want to throw my iced tea in anger. "Go on." Ivana continues the story haltingly. The house they were driven to, Sanaya's home, was cluttered with children's toys. First lesson in housekeeping cleaning. Apparently, she was told to clean the scattered toys. Next is the shower room, and also the toilet. While Ivana was doing the work, Sanaya, claiming to be supervising her housekeeping skills, was spending time with Lloyd in the living room. Isn't this basically using your partner for menial tasks under the guise of visiting home? Doesn't it feel like harassment? When I pressed for more details, "That's not all." Fresh tears streamed down from Ivana's eyes. "They told me to make dinner for Sanaya's family of 4 plus the 2 of us, just using what was in the fridge. I've never cooked for 6 people before. I thought I would learn how to cook as we went along in our marriage. I couldn't even come up with a menu." Ivana's ordeal continued. "So I found some eggplant in the fridge and tried to look up recipes on a cooking community website on my phone. Then Sanaya said, 'You should be able to cook by eye. Using your phone is unacceptable.' She took my phone away and said, 'This is a failure. I'm going to need to give you some intensive training. We're changing all our vacation plans to stay at our house.' The entire vacation? Even one day would be ridiculous, but the whole vacation. So that was it. Apparently, she took back her phone and returned home, sobbing. What even is this?" Ivana was really looking forward to their honeymoon. The hotel had a sparkling pool and a view of the beautiful ocean. They must have been excited to try poke balls and Hawaiian plate lunches. But Lloyd and Sanaya trampled over those dreams so easily. Then, Ivana, tears streaming down her face, brought up a suggestion. "Interesting. Sounds like a plan." I decided to support Ivana with all my might. As soon as the honeymoon was over, Ivana received a call from Lloyd. "We're coming over tomorrow to discuss how we're going to live from now on." When Ivana asked, "What do you mean by how we're going to live?" "You failed as Lloyd's partner, so we need to discuss what's next. Seth said you're a total failure in the kitchen. We need to talk specifics. Seth is coming with me. So listen carefully and think about where you went wrong." What? Reflect on my actions? I was about to explode with anger at that arrogant and unreasonable demand. but them coming over actually works in my favor. I decided to handle this calmly. Finally, the day of the confrontation arrived, and Sanaya and Lloyd showed up. Well, Ivana, done any reflecting? Lloyd starts off with arrogance right away. The serious demeanor he had during our first meeting seemed to have flown away. For now, please, come in. I led the two of them into the living room. Now, let's start the Ivana's partner test. I called out loudly for my husband, who was waiting in the other room. All right. My husband walks in holding a yoga mat, a confident smile on his face. Gotta keep in shape to protect the family. First, we're going to work on our core and back muscles. My husband has recently become concerned with aging and started going to the gym. With thrice weekly workouts guided by a personal trainer, he's got a solid chest, even at 60. Alright, we're doing push-ups on this mat. It's a competition. Lower yourself down for 3 seconds, count slowly, and then push back up. That's 1 rep. If you don't stay down for 3 seconds, you won't engage your core muscles. Lloyd, who appears to have never worked out a day in his life, is utterly shocked. If you're saying Ivana needs a Lloyd's partner test, then I'm going to test if you're fit to be Ivana's partner. Keeping in shape is important for family support and child rearing too. Now, place your hands slightly wider than shoulder width apart and get into a push-up position. Come on, hurry up. It felt like boot camp, as if a merciless drill sergeant was waiting to put Lloyd through the ringer. Both my husband and Lloyd assume the push-up position. And 1. At that moment, Lloyd collapses onto the floor and can't get back up. He's stuck to the floor like a squashed frog. Ha ha ha, you can't do it. I can do 50, you know. My husband is breezily doing push-ups beside him. His glasses are askew, his tie is crooked. Lloyd remains collapsed. Alright, you're next. I turned to Sanaya, who was standing there, dumbfounded. What? Me too? Now it's Sanaya's turn to be surprised. You seem to be fond of my Ivana. I will be the judge of whether you have the ability as a mom and a wife, and whether you're fit to guide my Ivana. Yes, this was the retaliation plan that Ivana had suggested to me. Sanaya's home had mold growing in the shower, and her toys were just pushed to the side. She wasn't exactly in a position to teach me how to clean. Based on what Ivana told me, I had formulated a plan. Then, I forcefully pulled Sanaya into the living room. I've lifted dirty just for you. This is your test. Now, start cleaning. Sanaya tried to deflect, saying, I came here for discussion from Hawaii. Huh? Didn't you make Ivana do chores under the guise of guidance and steal her leisure time? Well, I'm just returning the favor. Clean up quickly and call me when you're done. The next test awaits. I go back to the living room and make some good tea. I hand a cup to Ivana, who's quietly watching the plan unfold, and we both sit on the sofa. Meanwhile, Lloyd is struggling with his workout and getting berated by my husband. His neatly styled hair is now a mess. After a while, Sanaya returns to the living room. I've finished cleaning. Oh, that was quick, she says, peeking into the bathroom. It had taken her nearly an hour, so she must have done a decent job. At first glance, it looks clean, but there are clear traces of water streaks on the walls. If you don't wipe the water off shiny surfaces immediately, they'll get cloudy. Don't you even know that? Especially the mirror. It will get those white water stains. And you dare call yourself Ivana's mentor? I gave it to her, holding nothing back. Sanaya tried to make an excuse, saying, there's no mirror in my home's shower room. Well, I've heard from Ivana, who cleaned your house, that there indeed was a mirror. I quickly shot back. And she said there was also a lot of black mold. Clearly, you've been neglecting it. Sanaya was left without a comeback, but I couldn't let her off the hook that easily. Alright, next up is sewing. Get to the sewing machine. What? Just as she thought she could relax after cleaning, another task was upon her. A sewing machine is a must, isn't it? I've heard your child is still small, but it's a given. I grinned as I picked up some leftover quilted fabric from when I made Ivana's lunch bag ages ago. Sanaya and I headed to the craft room upstairs. Peeking into the living room, I saw Lloyd was still getting a serious workout. He might even pull a muscle or something. You'll make a simple bag with this fabric? I've already done the cutting for you. Aren't I kind? A sewing machine, you say? You're not going to tell me you've never used one, are you? You can do all sorts of housework, right? I took Sanaya's hand and made her sit in front of the sewing machine. I, don't know how to thread it. Sanaya looked down, clearly uncomfortable. Excuse me? So, about threading the machine. What? I can't thread it. I looked down at Sanaya, who was frozen in front of the sewing machine, and chuckled in disbelief. You claim to be a mentor, but you don't even know this. Ivana, come here. I called to Ivana downstairs. Coming! Ivana arrives. This lady here, she doesn't know the first thing about sewing. As I smirked, oh dear, Sanaya, like this. Ivana threaded the machine for her. Sanaya's face turned beet red, as if she couldn't bear the humiliation. Now, go ahead. Surrounded by the two of us, Sanaya started the sewing machine. Clatter, clatter, clatter. The stitching was all over the place. Pfft! I couldn't help but burst out laughing at her poor attempt. Ivana was also holding back a laugh, looking down. Some stitches were too deep, and others weren't aligned at all. Ivana, show her how it's done, will you? Sure, but usually you should do a securing stitch at the edge first. Well, it can't be helped, can it? She started sewing without any know-how. Our so-called leader here knows nothing. Ivana skillfully operated the sewing machine, stitching it straight. Having loved sewing from a young age and being in the sewing club through middle and high school, this was a piece of cake for Ivana. Watching that, Sanaya grumbled, You can just pay someone at a craft store to sew a bag for you. Really? Then what's the difference between outsourcing your sewing to a craft store and replacing your lack of cooking skills with supermarket pre-made meals? There are things you can do that Ivana can't, and vice versa. Stop making excuses and picking and choosing to suit your convenience. I said just that and headed down to the living room. On the first floor, Lloyd was still sprawled on the floor. It looked like he couldn't even get up anymore. Beside me, my husband was striking some sort of muscle pause. All right, let's have a talk. All of us. Still trembling with humiliation, Sanaya managed to take a seat on the sofa, along with Lloyd, who had somehow managed to get up. Ivana, my husband, and I sat across from them. First, take a look at this. I laid out the sewing pieces from both Sanaya and Ivana on the table for everyone to see and compare. It's downright hilarious that someone who can only produce something this shoddy would act like they're in charge. Lloyd stared at his sister's wobbly stitching, completely stunned. That said it all. Sanaya was at loss for words, her hands trembling. This one's a mess too. Unbelievable that they only had Ivana do the special training. This time, it was Dad who laid into Lloyd. You've been going on about women, but we really have to question how you're doing as a man yourself, I added, driving the point home. Okay, this is probably a good place to stop. That's right, I remembered something Ivana and I had agreed upon that day. Ivana, go ahead and bring it out. Ivana presented some documents. It's not a quick divorce or anything, but I just can't go on with you anymore. I'm glad I realized it sooner rather than later. Ivana stated it firmly. What? Their voices of surprise came out in unison. Both widened their eyes, flustered and mouths moving, but no words coming out. Hold on, I was thinking of forgiving you as long as you showed some remorse. Finally, Lloyd spoke up. Sure, I can't cook, but that's not something I need to be sorry about. Devoting all our honeymoon to training and bringing in Sanaya, it's all just too absurd. I can't be with you anymore. Ivana started signing the papers with a pen. Wait, so it's my fault that you're getting a divorce? All I did was point out your flaws. Now it was Sanaya's turn to panic. Ivana shook her head. I never said I can't cook. I was planning on learning eventually. Besides, she paused for a moment. Just like I have things I can and cannot do, so does Sanaya. Judging that slowly based on your own convenience and standards is wrong, she said, setting the record straight. I went in for the kill too. You can't even sew or clean acting all high and mighty. Plus, you ruined the honeymoon and treated Ivana like a servant. I am too embarrassed to be related to you. Just sign the divorce papers and get out. And so, Ivana came back to our home. Sanaya got divorced because she was terrible at housekeeping. How dare she continuously harass Ivana, claiming to be some sort of mom or Lloyd's partner without even considering her own flaws. This is what we call personal responsibility. Meanwhile, Lloyd kept making mistakes at work due to his inconsiderate personality. He even said something insensitive to a female coworker like, "These documents are a mess. Are you not in the mood to work just because you're feeling unwell?" He faced severe disciplinary action and was suspended from work. Would you come back? If you reflect on this, I believe we can start over. And I feel like I could even get my position back at work. It seems like Ivana kept getting messages from Lloyd pressuring her to get back together, despite showing no signs of remorse. That's not gonna happen. I'm getting married. With that, she promptly cut off communication. Yes, Ivana is set to remarry in 6 months. Her new partner is also a businessman, similar to before, but much more easygoing. He's into ab rolling and has a fit physique. As long as I can eat, I'm good. When they dine together, they get excited talking about things like protein for bodybuilding. Ivana, who's now seriously learning to cook, joins her in the kitchen. I mean, I could at least make scrambled eggs. While making sandwiches for work, Ivana recalls those days. It's okay, don't worry about it. You'll get the hang of it as you go along. With that, I seasoned the dish just by eyeballing it.
Stop the wedding! Don't marry her! A stranger burst into the ceremony right in the middle of my daughter's wedding. Dressed in a white dress, she turned out to be the groom's mistress. The couple, abandoning their vows, walked away hand in hand, as if they were in a scene from an old movie. But this was real life, and what they did was a blatant affair. My daughter left behind was so devastated she considered ending her life. If I had been a moment later, I would have lost her forever. I vowed to bring them to ruin. I'm Alea, 56 years old. While people my age are starting to think about retirement, I still plan to work with enthusiasm. My husband passed away early, so I raised my daughter Beatrice on my own. Beatrice is now 28, and I've been feeling sentimental watching her prepare for her wedding. Her fiancé, Bert, is a successful salesman. They met when Beatrice was a receptionist at one of Bert's major clients. She quit her job to become a housewife at Bert's request. "Quitting your job for marriage isn't trendy these days," she said, but she looked happy. Finally, the wedding day arrived. The ceremony was going smoothly, with everyone, including the parents, feeling nervous but excited. Since Beatrice doesn't have a father, I walked her down the aisle. I was thrilled when she asked me, but it was hard to hold back tears as memories flooded back. Just as the couple was about to say their vows, a loud voice interrupted. "Wait a minute!" We all turned to see the woman in the white dress standing at the entrance. The guests are taken aback by the intrusion of a stranger. I was also surprised and couldn't react. Beatrice muttered, "Maya." Apparently she knew her. "Don't marry her!" Maya shouted again. Beatrice looked at Bert, confused but also a bit angry. "Bert, what's going on? You said you broke up with Maya, that it was a one-time mistake. That's why I forgave you."
"Sorry, I realize I can't be without Maya. She loves me enough to chase after me like this. I love her too."
"What are you saying?"
From their conversation, it was clear Maya was Bert's past mistress. Beatrice had forgiven him, thinking they had broken up, but it seemed their affair had continued behind her back.
"If you love me, you'll wish me happiness,"
Bert said.
"We're destined to be together. Don't get in our way, Beatrice."
The two of them say lines that are so insane that it makes you think that they are probably drunk on forbidden love. Maya added, tears in her eyes. The two of them, lost in their forbidden love, left Beatrice behind and walked away. Days have passed since the wedding was called off. Beatrice had been locked in her room, depressed. My anger towards Bert and his mistress hasn't subsided. The only silver lining is that the marriage wasn't legally finalized, so Beatrice doesn't have a divorce on her record. But even after a week, she hasn't improved. She's not eating, and she looks constantly down. I'm really worried. So, to lift Beatrice's spirits even a little, I left work early and bought her favorite fruits on my way home. "I'm back. Beatrice, are you here?" The house was eerily quiet, which made me uneasy. When I stepped into the kitchen, I found Beatrice on the floor, bleeding. A knife lay near her. "Beatrice, hold on, Beatrice!" She was still breathing but unconscious. I was frantic. I had no idea what had happened or why Beatrice was in this state. I quickly administered first aid and called an ambulance. I also called the police, thinking she might have encountered a robber. When the doctor said,
"She's going to be okay, thanks to your quick first aid,"
I felt so relieved I almost collapsed. I was grateful for the medical staff's timely intervention. I thought all that was left was for the police to catch whoever had hurt Beatrice. But when she regained consciousness, she said, "Send the police away." "What are you talking about? If you were involved in an incident, we need to report it for your safety." "No, Mom, I did this to myself." "What?" I couldn't believe my ears. But Beatrice's downcast, tearful eyes told me she wasn't joking. "I was betrayed by Bert, even though we were about to get married. I felt pathetic for not realizing it." "But you did nothing wrong, Beatrice." "I know, but I quit my job, remember? Bert wanted me to be a housewife." Beatrice had let that man disrupt her life plans. Another reason I couldn't forgive him. Tears finally spilled from her eyes. "I don't know what to do now. I hate being a burden to you, Mom. You're not a burden. You're my precious daughter. My heart ached seeing Beatrice unable to stop crying. My anger towards her fiancé and his mistress intensified. I had no intention of forgiving them, and now my resolve was stronger. Even if they cry and apologize, I will never forgive them. I had made up my mind, but I didn't show it for now and told Beatrice as gently as I could, "Promise me you'll never do something like this again. Beatrice, I don't mind taking care of you, but I can't bear the thought of losing you forever." Beatrice nodded slightly. "And you don't have to suffer anymore, because their lives are about to be over." Beatrice tilted her head, puzzled. I smiled at her. 3 days later, I was in a conference room at the company where Beatrice used to work. Bert and his boss, the sales manager, were about to arrive. "Today, I'll settle this. Be prepared." The sky outside the window was clear and uplifting. It felt like even the sky was cheering me on. Soon, Bert and the sales manager entered the room.
"What? Why are you here?"
Bert was shocked to see me, which was understandable. He had been summoned by an important client for an important discussion, only to find me there.
"Hey, don't be rude." "But boss, she's an outsider."
The sales manager scolded Bert, who looked increasingly confused.
"An outsider, you say? This person is?"
"It's fine, let's get to the point. Please have a seat." I interrupted the sales manager and took a seat at the conference table, gesturing for the two men to sit across from me. "I'm the one who called both of you here today." Bert looked stunned, but I ignored him and began explaining the situation to the sales manager. "You may not be aware, but Bert recently had a wedding. He only invited family and friends, so no one at your company would know. But he abandoned my daughter at their wedding and ran off." The sales manager looked surprised. Bert started to protest.
"Why are you bringing this up here?"
Ignoring Bert's interruption, I continued. He was having an affair, and he chose his mistress over my daughter right in the middle of their wedding.
"Hey, shut up."
Furthermore, my daughter quit her job to be a housewife, as Bert wanted. He ruined her career. The sales manager asked Bert,
"Is this true?" "Yes, but I chose the person I love. Why does this have to do with work? Don't meddle in my personal life."
Bert's face clearly showed his frustration. "Love, you say? That's rich. If he loved someone else while engaged, he should have ended things properly. Otherwise, he's just a cheater." My daughter was left alone in front of many guests at the wedding and suffered greatly.
"You barged in here and spilled all this? What's your deal? This is business interference."
Bert was so focused on yelling at me, he didn't notice the sales manager's face turning pale. I gestured for the sales manager to hold off on scolding Bert. This is about business.
"What? How is?"
"The real issue is this. I don't want to do business with someone who treated my daughter, Beatrice, like that. I want to terminate our contract."
"What authority do you have to—" "Wait, did you say daughter of the president?"
Bert seemed to finally grasp the situation and was stunned. The truth is, this company was left to me by my late husband, the former president. I took it over after his passing. I've worked hard to build the company, carrying on my husband's wishes. Neither Beatrice nor I had told Bert that she was the president's daughter, but it wasn't a secret. Many executives from our company were at the wedding. If Bert had been genuinely involved in planning the wedding, he would have noticed. His ignorance proves that he had no real interest in Beatrice. The executives who witnessed the fiasco at the wedding were also starting to question his behavior. That's why not just me, but all the executives have lost trust in you.
But that was private. Let's not mix business and personal matters, okay?
So, anything goes in private? Bert clung to that argument, so I glared at him. Even a marriage is a kind of contract between two people. If someone who betrays that is in sales, how can we trust any contract with him? I sighed dramatically. Realizing he had no way out, Bert's face turned pale.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I beg you.
Bert quickly got off his chair and prostrated himself on the floor. But what meaning does an apology have when it's not out of guilt for Beatrice, but just a performance to save himself? I never intended to forgive him in the first place. We will terminate our contract with your company, and as long as he's there, we won't renew it.
What does that mean for my position?
I didn't even look at Bert as I made my declaration to the sales manager. Stunned, Bert must realize his days as a top salesperson are over. Besides, since that wedding fiasco, my team and I have been in talks with other companies. So, cutting ties with Bert's company won't be an issue for us, but it will be a significant blow to them. I can easily imagine what will happen to Bert, who caused all this. Also, I had an investigation done on his mistress. Turns out she's not someone who would make him happy in the long run. By the way, I thought you should know. Her name is Maya, right? Did you know she doesn't work? Yet she seems to spend a lot of money and even has debts.
What? What are you talking about?
As I suspected, Bert knew nothing and looked shocked. Maya is with Bert because he has a stable income and is willing to spend it on her. She's after his money. If Bert loses his job, or even just sees a decrease in income, both will struggle financially. They're not the type to support each other through hard times, so a breakup is inevitable. And one more thing. Do you know that Maya is pregnant?
What? Really?
Bert looked up, surprised. Clearly, he didn't know. From his slightly happy expression, I could tell. Maya will probably tell you it's your child, but the truth is, even she doesn't know who the father is.
What do you mean? Another possible father?
She has too many possibilities, it seems. What was all that talk about destiny when she lured you away during Beatrice's wedding? She probably didn't want to let go of a man who gives her money.
You're lying.
For a moment, Bert looked stunned, but then suddenly changed his tune.
So, the only one who truly loves me is Beatrice? I'll get back with her. So, President, please continue the contract.
What are you talking about?
I realize the woman who truly matters to me is Beatrice. This was just a big lover's quarrel. If I marry Beatrice, everything will go back to normal. There's no need to terminate the contract, right?
I couldn't help but be amazed. Was he serious? I told you the reason I don't want to work with you is that I can't trust you. It's not because you're no longer my son-in-law. It's because of your actions.
But that was just a momentary lapse.
There are mistakes in life you can't undo. In reality, Beatrice was on the verge of a point of no return. Even now, thinking about that day gives me chills. If I hadn't come home early that day, I might never have seen my daughter again. And the cause of all this was Bert. From my attitude, he must have sensed that he had no chance of being accepted. He sat there trembling, his face pale. I felt no sympathy. How could I, when he had plunged Beatrice from the height of happiness into the depths of despair? In the end, Bert was moved to a department known as the dumping ground among employees. His salary was also significantly reduced. Beatrice, who had regained some of her spirit, found out she could claim damages even at the engagement stage, and did so from both Bert and the mistress. Since Bert is responsible for all the wedding costs, they both owe $80,000. But they had hardly saved anything and had to go into debt. As expected, they broke up. Beatrice is now completely over it. As for work, she says, "This is a good opportunity to become independent by working for another company," and is actively job hunting. I'm supporting my daughter in every way I can. Oh, you're late, Emily. I'm starving. Get dinner ready, will ya? The living room looked like it had been ransacked. Lying on the couch like she owns the place, my mother-in-law pushed me to my limit. That's it, I'm done taking this from her. My name is Emily. I met my husband Samuel through work and we got married. We're both career-driven. We love our jobs so much that we discussed how to balance work and family life before getting married. Once kids are in the picture, priorities shift, and you have to make sacrifices. We chose not to have children so we could focus on our careers and eventually go independent. We share the housework and vow to support each other. Our jobs keep us busy, but we get along well. We spend our weekends chatting about work or enjoying some leisure time. But there's one yearly event that's pure torture for me: going on vacation with my father-in-law and mother-in-law. Samuel and I agree that family is important. Since he respects my family, I want to do the same for his. I don't mind going on these trips. It's just my mother-in-law who irks me. She just can't stand me. During a family meeting, Samuel explained that we wouldn't be having kids and would continue working. While my father-in-law was understanding, my mother-in-law flew off the handle. "How can you marry a woman who doesn't want kids? I've been looking forward to grandchildren. Women should quit their jobs when they get married. Women can't accomplish anything meaningful in the workplace." My father-in-law snapped back.
"Well, maybe you never accomplished much, but Emily has a promising career."
This led to a heated argument between them. Samuel had to step in to break it up, exasperated. Ever since that terrible family meeting, my mother-in-law and I had been on bad terms. The day of the trip had arrived. Feeling downcast, I headed to the meeting spot where I'd see my father-in-law and mother-in-law. Samuel turned to me.
"Hey, it's alright if you don't want to do this, you know?"
I replied, "No worries, let's go." Our trip with father-in-law and mother-in-law was an overnight stay. We had separate rooms for my in-laws, so we didn't spend the night together. A day or two of discomfort wasn't a big deal. When we arrived at the meeting place, father-in-law greeted us warmly, but mother-in-law seemed constantly upset. It was hard to enjoy the trip while not trying to annoy my visibly irritable mother-in-law. Father-in-law had recently retired from the company where he'd worked for years, although he was rehired for some time. While we caught up about his life post-retirement, mother-in-law only had sarcastic remarks. "Any woman who doesn't want kids is worthless. Poor Samuel married to someone like you. You should quit your job and focus on housework," she muttered. Eventually, father-in-law had enough.
"What are you grumbling about? We're here to enjoy this trip together. What's there to complain about?"
"You're the one who doesn't understand. She's always working and probably neglecting housework. How can you not feel sorry for Samuel?" Exhausted by the sudden argument between father-in-law and mother-in-law, we decided to head to the hotel early. But when we got there and checked our reservation at the front desk, something was wrong. For some reason, only my name was missing, and the room intended for both of us was now a single room for Samuel. Upon inquiring at the front desk, we were told my reservation was canceled a few days earlier. Puzzled, we told father-in-law and mother-in-law what happened. While father-in-law looked confused, mother-in-law flashed a triumphant smile.
It's only natural that you don't have a room, Emily. This is a family trip and you're not family. You should just go home,
mother-in-law said. Wait, did you cancel my reservation?
Of course, it was me.
Father-in-law, Samuel, and I were all speechless. It was like she didn't even realize the outrageousness of her own words. Sighing, I said, all right, then I'll leave since I'm not family.
Good, go now.
I'm going too.
As Samuel stood up to leave with me, mother-in-law raised her voice.
What?
Even father-in-law stood up and said,
I'm leaving too.
Leaving mother-in-law to distort her face in confusion. Father-in-law apologized to me and gave mother-in-law a few $100s in cash before packing his bags.
Look, you can stay if you want, but I can't enjoy this trip feeling like this. From now on, no more family vacations for me.
What are you talking about? If you're leaving, at least let Samuel stay.
No way! The way Mom treats Emily is just too much. Plus, I'm tired of all the arguing.
So, leaving a deflated mother-in-law behind, the three of us decided to head home. The flight back was the best part of the trip. We all sat together and had a great time. Mother-in-law, stubborn as ever, stayed at the hotel for one more night and spent every last cent father-in-law had given her. Sure enough, when mother-in-law got back, she and father-in-law had a huge fight. According to Samuel, their relationship had been rocky for a while now. Samuel was worried their relationship might get even worse now that father-in-law had more time at home. That worry turned out to be well-founded a few days later. Samuel went to work and I was enjoying my day off when the doorbell rang. There stood mother-in-law with a load of bags. What? Mother-in-law?
I'm done living with my husband. I'm staying here for a while.
Ignoring my shock, mother-in-law waltzed in and took over the living room. Feeling stuck, I called Samuel at work. Sorry to bother you at work, but mother-in-law just showed up here. What? Upon hearing my report, Samuel was shocked and tried to call his father, but it seemed like his dad didn't answer the phone. I tried to ask mother-in-law what happened between her and father-in-law and suggested they should talk, but she just ignored me. Meanwhile, mother-in-law lounged on our sofa as if she owned the place.
Ugh, what a filthy house. It's all because you work, Emily. Being under the same roof with you is unbearable. Samuel really needs to divorce you soon,
she muttered incessantly. I was resigned to her comments, going about my life as usual. She, however, never stopped badgering me. Samuel came home early that day to persuade his mother to leave, but she wouldn't budge. In the end, we couldn't reach father-in-law and were forced to live with mother-in-law until we could. The next day, Samuel and I had to work, leaving mother-in-law behind.
Just quit your job already,
she said, but I ignored her. When I got home that evening, it looked like a burglar had been through the place.
Wow, you're late. Emily, I'm hungry, so get dinner started,
mother-in-law said, lying on the sofa like a couch potato. What happened here?
Oh, this mess? Must be because you don't clean.
No, that's not the point. Why is everything dumped out of the drawers?
You didn't prepare lunch, did you? I was looking for something to eat.
I didn't understand how looking for food led her to rummaging through my drawers. I voiced my confusion, but mother-in-law just ignored me. Realizing that my credit card was missing, my heart sank. Just as I suspected, my mother-in-law had probably stolen it. As I was contemplating how to bring up the issue, Samuel walked through the door. Seeing the state of the house, he immediately started arguing with his mother. I pulled Samuel aside and whispered that my credit card was missing. Rubbing his temples, he sighed.
Give me a break. Look, we can't let her get away with this. She needs to face the consequences.
If you say so, leave it to me. Samuel agreed, and so we resolved to make mother-in-law pay for her actions. A few days later, Samuel finally got through to his father, who had been unresponsive because he was traveling with a friend and didn't have his phone. When he returned home, he found a note from my mother-in-law on the table. It read, "I'm still mad about being left behind during the trip. I'm leaving this house." Knowing his father would be coming over, Samuel and I adjusted our work schedules to be home. When we got back, my mother-in-law casually said, "Oh, you're home early." But her expression changed when she saw her husband arrive. "What? Why are you here? Did you come to get me?"
No, I came to give you this.
He handed her filled-out divorce papers. "What?" she exclaimed, visibly shocked.
Your selfish behavior has only escalated over the years, especially your treatment towards Emily. Why can't you accept the woman your son chose? I've reached my limit. I want a divorce,"
he calmly stated. "Fine, let's get a divorce. I have Samuel, so I don't need you. Emily, bring me a pen. You're so useless." Although annoyed, I handed her a pen as quickly as I could to get her to sign. Once I confirmed that there were no errors in the signed divorce papers, I addressed my irritated mother-in-law. "I have something I want to show you." "What could be so important right now?" she snapped. I opened my laptop in front of her. On the screen was a video of her shopping. "I'm going to zoom in," I told her as I enlarged the image. In her hand was an illustrated credit card. "That credit card isn't yours, is it?" "Well, it's mine."
You don't have a credit card.
I had already checked with father-in-law, who spoke in a tone of disbelief. You see, mother-in-law had once maxed out a credit card without father-in-law's knowledge, so ever since, father-in-law hadn't let her have a credit card. Mother-in-law loudly snapped at father-in-law. "I'm the one who made it." Samuel coolly retorted,
Like you can make it. This card is a limited edition, you know. See the artwork? It was only available during a special collaboration.
As Samuel pointed out, this credit card was indeed a limited edition. I loved the artwork on it, and had gotten the card when it was in a collaboration. I usually kept it tucked away in a drawer as a kind of collection. So the thing is, mother-in-law had stolen it. We could have suspended the card immediately, but Samuel and I let mother-in-law dig her own grave so we could gather irrefutable evidence. I have time-stamped photos, and when we checked the card's transaction history, it matched the time mother-in-law was out shopping. Seems like you've bought other luxury items too. It's not true. I didn't steal any credit card. Really? Then let's submit these photos and the transaction history to the police. We need to find out who misused the card if it wasn't you. The police? Mother-in-law's voice cracked in surprise. Of course, someone stole from us, I said, and mother-in-law started making outrageous claims. The photo is fake. Who would even take such a picture? Someone just fabricated this. I'm innocent. I took that photo. What? As I've told you before, I'm a journalist. I work as a journalist, capable of tailing people and collecting photographic evidence if needed. Mother-in-law had no chance of escaping with a pro like me on her tail. I operated my laptop and displayed photo after photo of mother-in-law buying various luxury goods. If it wasn't you, the police will figure it out when we present all this evidence. Don't worry, and if police involvement seems unlikely, we'll get a lawyer. I knew that police often don't intervene in civil matters. Them taking action over mother-in-law misusing the credit card without permission was unlikely, but I had used the threat of calling them. However, the idea of consulting a lawyer was real. I was collecting evidence photos to claim damages.
Even if you're my daughter-in-law, I'm still your mother. What kind of horrible person takes such pictures of family?
Odd, I recall you saying I wasn't family when we went on a trip. Upon hearing my confrontational words, mother-in-law's face turned beet red. In a flustered state, she shoved father-in-law aside and ran out of the house. While I was asking father-in-law, who had fallen, "Are you okay?" Samuel sprinted out of the house. Given that Samuel enjoys running, he's pretty quick on his feet. Mother-in-law had no chance to escape and was caught almost immediately. I informed her that I would report to the lawyer that she had injured father-in-law in addition to running away. Although father-in-law wasn't seriously hurt, he did injure his back and had to go to the hospital. I told mother-in-law we would also be billing her for the medical expenses, to which she tearfully responded,
"I don't have that kind of money."
I didn't care. Samuel said,
"I can't deal with parents like this,"
and handed mother-in-law a letter of disownment, thus completing her eviction. As promised, we contacted a lawyer we know and initiated the process to cut ties with mother-in-law, including claims for damages and medical expenses. Later, we heard that mother-in-law had moved in with her estranged sister and brother-in-law to borrow money. Although her sister's family runs a business and lent her the money, mother-in-law now works like a horse to pay it back. We ended up living with father-in-law. It wasn't a big deal, but we were concerned about leaving father-in-law alone with his sore back. Father-in-law has been proactive in helping around the house, which has been a great relief to both Samuel and me. Father-in-law's years of work experience also bring valuable advice to our careers. Of course, if father-in-law's health deteriorates, we're prepared to support him fully. Now that mother-in-law is out of the picture, the three of us are living harmoniously, enjoying the return of peaceful days.
I'm Karen, 27 years old. My husband Steven is the same age, and we got married last year. We both work full-time. I'm a nurse and Steven is in pharmaceutical sales. We met at a happy hour event organized by a coworker. I love a good drink, so that evening, the after-work cocktails tasted especially good. We had crossed paths before, but that night was the first time we really talked. Our drink preferences clicked and we hit it off. Every time we met, it was fun and comfortable. So it didn't take long for us to start dating. On my birthday, Steven confessed his feelings and we officially became a couple. Our favorite dates involve finding hidden gems that serve great drinks. I love wine while Steven is into sake. Our differing tastes actually make it fun as we get to teach each other new things. As our relationship progressed, I started thinking about marriage. That's when I learned about Steven's background. His parents divorced when he was young, and he never knew his father. He was raised by a single mom, and they're very close. Steven has never moved out of his family home. Is that a flaw, or does it show how much he values family? I tend to get blinded by love, and back then I saw it as a positive trait. Steven is kind and incredibly handsome. I couldn't find any flaws. I felt so lucky to marry the perfect man that it scared me. I had no idea that a terrifying married life awaited me. Before the wedding, I often dined with my mother-in-law. She would always tell Steven, "Karen is like a daughter to me. Don't let her get away. Marry her soon." I always told Steven I felt happy hearing this and looked forward to becoming family. Steven, who's great with people, also had a stellar reputation with my parents. Everything went smoothly and we got married. Neither of us likes being the center of attention, so we didn't have a big wedding. After the wedding, Steven moved out of his family home for the first time. However, concerned about his mom, we chose an apartment just a 10-minute walk from his family home. In hindsight, that was a mistake, but it's too little, too late now. My mother-in-law, who used to treat me like a daughter, changed after the wedding. She started treating me like a mortal enemy and began visiting daily. I gently told Steven, I appreciate that your mom visits every day, but it's hard for me to relax. Could you ask her to come less often on work days? Steven responded,
Why? We're family now. Mom gets lonely. She loves to talk and hates being alone. I wish you would be more understanding. This is my home too, and I can't tell her something I don't believe. If you have something to say it yourself. I won't.
Steven doesn't accept my opinion. I was surprised by his unexpected response. From that day on, Steven would get moody whenever I mentioned anything about his mother. I started to hold back to avoid arguments. My mother-in-law took advantage of this. Before I knew it, Steven had given her a spare key. One day, I came home to find mother-in-law cooking in our kitchen without asking. I was shocked to find her in my space, so my tone got a bit sharp. What are you doing, mother-in-law? You can't just come in here without asking. Mother-in-law shot back, What's going on with your fridge? It's practically empty. I have never seen such a lifeless fridge. Do you even cook? Don't tell me you're always buying deli items. I couldn't hold back anymore. I shop for fresh ingredients daily. I've heard your fridge is always packed like a traffic jam. It's impressive you can manage that. I just bought ingredients today. Sure, we have deli days, but I also cook to save money. And by the way, deli food these days is pretty good. Don't you ever try it? Mother-in-law wasn't backing down. Oh, listen to you. I would rather not have Steven eat food when we don't even know who made it. This is what happens when he marries an incompetent wife. I should have taught him to be more discerning about women. Sparks were flying between us. Once I started airing my grievances, I couldn't stop. Do you see the shopping bag, mother-in-law? There's not a single deli item in it. I am busy, so could you please not get in my way? You're not even a guest anymore since you let yourself in. Mother-in-law stormed out, her face red. I'll tell Steven about this. I had more to say, but she left. I knew I was in the right, although it made me uncomfortable. I wasn't wrong. I shook off the bad vibes and started cooking pot roast. Then Steven came home, his face a splitting image of his angry mom.
What did you say to mom? She called me crying. How could you be so cruel when she was just trying to help because you're busy?
I was baffled. First off, breaking into someone's home isn't a surprise. And if it is, then burglars should be forgiven if they call it a surprise, right? This happened because you gave her a spare key. She could have come when one of us was home. It's not only unnecessary but also intrusive. What about my privacy? I have no intention of apologizing. Steven looked shocked and one word,
Please, can you two just get along?
He retreated to his room without eating dinner. I hoped this fight would make him more considerate. For the next 2 days, we barely spoke. I couldn't stand the tension, so I brought it up. What do you want to do going forward? I don't want a relationship where we don't communicate. Let's talk. Steven finally said,
Mom's remorseful. She was crying yesterday. Worried you would never forgive her. The root cause was me giving her the spare key. I'm sorry, Karen.
I didn't care about mother-in-law. As long as Steven understood, that was enough. My weakness showed and I forgave him. Even though I know in the back of my mind, my fault is that I forgive it. Steven immediately called mother-in-law. She came running, happy to be summoned. I had a bad feeling, but I was tired of fighting. If she would change her ways, fine. As soon as mother-in-law saw my face, it was as if a switch had been turned on. Oh, I'm so relieved. I thought Karen would never speak to me again. I know I overstepped and I promised never to do it again. Mother-in-law started talking in a voice as sweet as if she were talking to a cat. For some reason, I just have a bad feeling about it. She then pulled out a mysterious bag from her purse. I met an old friend from college yesterday. She's unbelievably youthful and beautiful. She gave me some Chinese tea. That's her beauty secret. I thought I'd share some with you, not that you need it. I had a bad feeling, but felt awkward refusing.
Steven whispered, just have 1 cup of tea with her. I'll make sure she leaves as soon as possible.
So, wanting her gone, I agreed to drink the tea. I have always enjoyed Chinese tea and it's popular at my workplace too. Mother-in-law quickly poured hot water into the tea pack.
This tea is supposed to be good for your skin and boost female hormones. You guys are thinking about having kids soon, right? If you like it, I'll tell my friend to get some for you,
she said, placing the cup in front of me. The aroma was a bit unusual, but I took a sip anyway. It tasted strange, but I downed it, thinking it was just a new flavor. However, my bad feeling came true. I woke up in the middle of the night with stomach pain, feeling half faint. By the time I felt better, it was already morning. There was no doubt about it. The only thing I had consumed that Stephen hadn't was the suspicious Chinese tea. I told Stephen about it, but he didn't take me seriously.
Karen, that's a terrible accusation. Mom brought that tea to make amends. You're making it sound like she poisoned you. Don't you feel ashamed? It's probably just an upset stomach. Mom would never do something like that.
Stephen wouldn't believe that I was being malicious, but without evidence, I couldn't press the issue. Still, I've been wary of anything from mother-in-law since then. Just before Stephen's birthday, mother-in-law called.
Karen, I'm cooking for Steven's birthday. You can come or not, it's up to you. You're busy, right? Maybe you should take some time to refresh yourself.
She was planning to celebrate Stephen's birthday without me. I've been scared to eat anything from her since that day. And homemade food was out of the question. But I was planning to spend Stephen's birthday together, so I felt upset. I thought we would spend his birthday together since we are newlyweds. I assume you have celebrated with him every year until now, so from now on, it's my turn. Before I could finish, she cut me off.
Anyway, I want Steven to come home. You don't have to come, Karen. We can celebrate your birthday next month, okay?
I decided to leave the decision to Stephen. That night, he said,
Did you hear? You're free to do whatever you want that day.
He chose mother-in-law over me without hesitation, and I was getting fed up. On Stephen's birthday, he was in high spirits, and it made me feel sick. My feelings for him started to wane. He seemed to enjoy celebrating with just his mom, becoming more of a mama's boy, and they started dining out together more frequently. I'm busy with work and can't focus on that all the time. A month flew by, and it was my birthday. We usually celebrated at our favorite restaurant. I assumed this year would be the same, but Stephen surprised me.
Mom wants to celebrate your birthday with us. She would be happiest if you two got along.
I was so shocked, I froze. Stephen, still in high spirits, didn't notice. I said, I wanted to celebrate just with you, Stephen. We weren't together on your birthday, so let's spend mine together. For some reason, Stephen thought I was being polite.
No, you don't have to hold back. Mom offered, so it's fine.
He just didn't get it. I had no choice but to be firm. Stephen, no offense to mother-in-law, but I want to spend my birthday just with you. I want to go to our special restaurant. Then Stephen suddenly got angry.
Don't waste Mom's kindness. You're heartless. Why haven't you noticed that Mom didn't invite you to my birthday? Just do as I say.
It's already a hassle. I was done arguing. And then came my birthday. Instead of a restaurant, we were at home, and of course, mother-in-law was there. Neither of them seemed interested in my low spirits. I started to get angry as I saw them enjoying themselves in the kitchen. Then the lights went out and the cake came in. I was angry, but the cake helped me cool down a bit. Before blowing out the candles, mother-in-law announced she had a gift.
I bought a wine worth $5,000 for your birthday celebration. Let me uncork it right away.
The packaging looked worn and the cork was crumbling. Is this what they call vintage? Mother-in-law poured a generous amount of wine into my glass. Even in the dim light, I could see the wine was cloudy. Memories of the Chinese tea incident came flooding back. I took a small sip.
What is this?
I spat it out immediately and turned on the lights. I turned the bottle of mother-in-law's so-called $5,000 wine upside down in the kitchen sink. Wine flowed down the drain. Stephen quickly grabbed the bottle from me.
You're terrible. Apologize to Mom. What do you think you're doing?
I saw what it meant to have a face filled with anger. Stephen was glaring at me. I poured wine into the glass Stephen was holding.
Can you drink this then?
Stephen looked puzzled but stubborn. He took a sip. At that moment, mother-in-law shouted,
Stephen, don't drink it!
Too little, too late. He spat it out immediately.
What the heck is this?
Mother-in-law took the wine away from Stephen. A shocked Stephen asked,
Mom, where did you buy this wine? We need to file a complaint. This is fraud. It's spoiled.
Mother-in-law looked guilty and said, "That wine was just sitting in the back of our kitchen. It's 50 years old. I heard on TV that it gains $1,000 in value every year." Vintage wines are properly stored in wine coolers. Upon closer inspection, the cork was more damaged than I thought. It was cloudy and smelled like mold. Even Stephen couldn't hide his surprise. What bothered me was mother-in-law's "don't drink it." I suspect she knew it was spoiled, but she would never admit it. I couldn't forgive mother-in-law for this. "Can you please leave? I can't keep my composure. Just get out of my sight." Even as I said this, mother-in-law kept making excuses to Stephen. I felt invisible. But even mother-in-law, clearly uncomfortable, made a hasty exit. After she left, Stephen said something unexpected.
Mom doesn't drink, so she wouldn't know. Good thing we didn't give it to anyone else.
Even after all this, Stephen defended mother-in-law as if it were an accident? At that moment, my feelings for him cooled. My resolve solidified against Stephen, who defended mother-in-law despite what she had done to me. I had been turning a blind eye to his excessive attachment to his mom. I want a divorce now. I presented Stephen with divorce papers I had kept just in case. He was speechless. When he asked why, I said, "Ask yourself. Do you know how much I have put up with? I have reached my limit." Then, without asking, on top of that, he deeply apologized, saying,
"I won't do it again. You're the one for me."
He started confessing to multiple affairs. I had suspected infidelity, but I was shocked to hear about 4 different women. I had no more doubts. I decided to divorce him. There was no need for a private investigator. Evidence of his affairs was plentiful. During our discussion, he suddenly blurted out,
"You'll regret divorcing a cool guy like me."
Stephen says like a fool. I was disgusted at my own foolishness for ever loving such a man. Multiple affairs and being a mama's boy were more than enough reasons for divorce. To avoid complications, I decided to hire a lawyer, even if it would be expensive. Stephen initially resisted the divorce, but eventually gave in, perhaps realizing the extent of his mistakes. He went back to his beloved mom. Later, it was revealed that his affair was with a co-worker and he was demoted as a result. Unable to be away from his mother, Stephen quit his job. He's apparently job hunting, but rumors spread fast. He can't find a job in the same field because his workplace affair became public. Still, unable to separate from his mother, he ended up working part-time. Given his arrogant and unreliable nature, it's unlikely he will keep the job for long. I need him to work steadily to pay me alimony. For now, the payments are coming in without issue, so let's call it good. I later found out that mother-in-law, who had acted so high and mighty, was a hoarder. Stephen's family home was literally a trash place. No wonder they never wanted me over. Eventually, the stench became a nuisance to the neighbors and the police had to intervene. The thought of drinking wine from that house still makes me sick. Stephen can live in his trash place and work his random part-time jobs with his beloved mother-in-law for all I care. I may have returned to my old life, but I'm happier just not being tormented every day. Stephen won't be coming to my workplace anymore, so that's a relief. In hindsight, Stephen had good looks but nothing else. The fact that he's making the alimony payments is a plus, I guess. Breaking up made me realize this: love is indeed blind. I have learned my lesson this time. I'm putting romance on hold for a while. I want to focus on my career.
The day after my surgery, I woke up to find my husband and my mother-in-law in the room. Sorry, I was on a step ladder at work and I fell off.
What are you doing? You're a part-timer, aren't you? Why not leave that to the full-timers? Is this another of your meddling ways?
Can you not talk to me like that? I have to stay in the hospital for a while, so sorry for the inconvenience. Oh, speaking of, I just transferred this month's share of expenses to the bank account. I usually contribute to household expenses with my part-time earnings, but now I'm stuck here. I can't even cook, let alone shop. So I figured at least I can give them money. But my mother-in-law turned it down. We don't need your measly earnings. Can you stop making that? I'm doing my part face. Huh? I had no such intention. Intention or not, that's the face you're making. We don't need you. I'm here. Besides, how much can a part-timer really make?
It's not a lot, but it's enough to help with groceries.
Sure, whatever.
My mom-in-law's unyielding attitude started to make me angry. I'm the one hurt, but neither of them has shown any concern. Then my husband, Ash, said something unbelievable. Frankly, you don't need to come back after discharge. You're just a liability. And it's a waste of time and money. Don't expect me to pay your hospital bills.
What? He's right. It's your own fault you're injured. We're the ones who will have to shoulder the burden, so you should pay us.
Why do the useless ones always cost so much? With that, Ash and my mother-in-law left the room. Both despise any form of expense. So it's no wonder they're angry about me being in the hospital, worrying more about money than about me. I've started to think I shouldn't have married in the first place. A few hours later. Oh, Miss Granite, long time no see.
Is that you, Jimmy? What brings you here?
I heard you got hurt, so I had to come visit. Just kidding. But I did hear from a former colleague that you're injured, so I took the time to come see you.
Wow, you didn't have to. Aren't you busy?
True, when I got headhunted a few years back, I was thinking of quitting because I wasn't used to the new environment, but thanks to your advice, I come this far. I will never forget that. Thank you so much.
You're making it sound like a big deal.
The person who came to visit me is a former colleague from the company I've used to work at named Mr. James. Everyone, myself included, called him Jimmy. After leaving the company, I would occasionally meet up with old colleagues, but Jimmy had been reassigned and stopped coming. Apparently, he was headhunted by another company and resigned. Back when I was still working at the company, he didn't strike me as particularly competent. I guess he found his calling somewhere and turned into a professional. But I didn't expect him to go out of his way to visit me in the hospital. Coming after seeing Ash and mom-in-law, his kindness felt particularly warm. I was still frustrated from what Ash had said to me earlier, so I vented to Jimmy. Really? Your husband sounds quite harsh.
This isn't a joke. I'm genuinely frustrated and angry.
Well, I don't get it. Where's your husband seeing incompetence? The Miss Granite I know was far from incompetent. She was a talented worker. You were sorely missed when you left the company.
Work and marriage are different, you know.
Fair point. I've never met your husband. Is he younger than you?
Yes, he is. That's why he's so attached to his mother. They're always together, and instead of defending me, he joins Mom in complaining about me. It's so annoying. Thanks though, Jimmy. Talking to you lightened my mood a bit. Once I'm better, let's go out for a meal and invite others too.
Absolutely. I'll come by again when I have some time. And with that, Jimmy left the hospital room. He's like a close female friend in some ways. He's the same age as my husband, but he's so much more mature in what he says and does. The difference between them makes me indescribable. Well, I chose Ash, so it's also my fault. Later, I began rehabilitation. During my hospital stay, all I could think about was wanting to go home as soon as possible. But if I go home, Ash and Mom-in-law will be there. I'd rather stay in the hospital. It's far less stressful. 2 weeks later, Ash comes to visit again, bringing mother-in-law with him.
What do you want? Didn't you say I shouldn't bother coming home if I'm incompetent? Yet here you are, visiting me again.
Hey, aren't you happy I came to see you?
Frankly, if you're going to complain, you don't have to visit at all.
Oh, easy there. Why are you so mad? I haven't even said anything yet.
See, that's why our child acts distant with you. You always have this cold demeanor. Consider other people's feelings for once. That's why you end up hospitalized.
Here we go again. Whenever Ash is criticized, mother-in-law goes all in with her supported fire. Even though it's a conversation between husband and wife, things never move forward when she chimes in. That's why I stay quiet when mom-in-law intervenes. Arguing back would only lead to more counter-arguments, and I'd be the one blamed in the end. This time, I was patiently waiting for the storm to pass, but it showed no sign of stopping. Worse still, they started talking about Ash's girlfriend. My son was thinking of marrying someone else before you, but they broke up over a trivial argument. He would have made amends if he'd apologize, but his pride's so high. He said he'd never apologize because it was her fault.
Look, it really was her fault. I did nothing wrong. Sure, she had a good personality and was attractive. In hindsight, maybe I should have apologized. Then I would be married to someone useless like you.
See, that's what I've been saying from the beginning. Are you sure you want to be with her? I always knew it was a bad idea. This proves I was right.
It's just a fluke. I happened to choose an unsuitable partner this time. I'll be more careful choosing someone with similar sensibilities next time.
The conversation was unbearable. I'm not the patient type to keep quiet forever. Moreover, this guy just mentioned choosing another partner. It seemed like he had thoughts of divorcing me. Well, it'll be a dream come true for me too. Frustrated, I let loose my anger on Ash and mother-in-law. You both have a lot to say, but this is just ridiculous. You mentioned I'm an unsuitable partner, but you're not even good enough to be called that. Initially, I thought you were decent, but it turns out you're just a mama's boy. Plus, mom is so fond of her son. Why don't you two just live together forever? Then no one would end up this unsuitable partner like me. You two seem to get along so well, why not? After saying all this, I felt a mix of regret and relief. What was funny though was the way both of their expressions changed from surprise to tense as I was saying this.
Who do you think you're talking to? Where are your parents? What's with the attitude? For someone so useless, you sure know how to run your mouth.
Mom, there it is. You're quick to call people incompetent, but are you so well-rounded yourself? Must be nice being perfect at your job at home, huh? You're really something.
When I sarcastically praised mom-in-law, her face turned even redder.
How dare you act so smug? Who do you think you are?
I'm the patient here.
You little...
Just then, Ash intervened.
Hey, enough is enough. From where I stand, you're way more incompetent than Mom. Mom raised me all by herself while holding down a job. Could you do that?
I wouldn't know. I've never been in that situation. But if I were a parent, I'd teach my kids not to look down on others. It's not cool to call people incompetent, especially someone who's hospitalized.
I see. Well, it's clear. We've never been a good match. Let's divorce. No point in staying together after all this.
Fine by me. You were talking about being cautious with your next partner, right? That implies we're done. I wouldn't want to spend my life with you. Or your mother anyway.
Huh. You do realize you'll be financially unstable if we divorce, right? How are you gonna afford these hospital bills? Let alone your living expenses.
I got injured at work, so I'll get workers' compensation.
And after that, got no plans, huh?
Ash had a point. Even if I plan on finding a job immediately after the divorce, there's no guarantee that I'll find one quickly. Plus, it will take time to see any income. The situation isn't looking good. I need to figure something out before it's too late. I have been vocal until now, but the moment I stopped talking, they took the opportunity to go on the offensive.
So you haven't thought it through? Tough break. But what's said is said. We both want this divorce. If you promise to obey me like a housemaid from now on, I might reconsider. Right, Mom?
Yes, absolutely.
Not happening. Can you please leave? You're polluting the air.
You're a piece of work. Don't say I didn't warn you. You threw away your last chance.
With that, Ash and mom-in-law left the room, sneering. I have to find a job soon. My current workplace won't cut it. I'll go anywhere that offers full-time employment. Just a few minutes later, Ash returned to the room.
Hey.
What?
No, my boss was around. Just let me hide here until he's out of sight.
Come to think of it, Ash had been complaining about his current boss a lot lately. Apparently, Ash had been enjoying a slack job until this new boss came and shook up the department.
Why is he coming this way? Could he be next door?
What? Just then, there's a knock at the hospital room door. Ash shakes his head at me. I find his discomfort quite amusing. With a cheerful tone, I say, "Come on in." To my surprise, it's Jimmy who walks in.
Miss Granite, I had some free time, so I thought I'd come visit you. Wait, what are you doing here? Oh, Mr. James, good to see you. Huh? Oh, you must be Miss Granite's husband.
Yes, that's him. Did I introduce you to Ash, Jimmy? I think this is your first time meeting.
No, actually, we see each other every day. He's my subordinate right now.
What? Really?
It turns out, of all people, Jimmy is Ash's boss. Totally unexpected. Yet, it strikes me as an opportunity for a counterattack. I'm in a really good position right now. Might as well corner Ash gradually.
So, Jimmy, how's Ash's performance at work?
Hard to say in front of Miss Granite. He has areas for improvement, but the fact that he's sticking to it is admirable. We had drinks the other day, and he told me he respects me, so my expectations are high.
When I look at Ash, he's staring at the floor, fists clenched. He's probably thinking, "Don't say anything." So I decide to go ahead and speak.
You know, my husband mentioned something about his boss. Turns out that was you, Jimmy. But I wonder if I should say this.
Go ahead, no worries. Hey, Granite.
My new boss is so incompetent.
He doesn't get me at all, or I'm only drinking with him to gain his favor. I'll bring him down someday.
I recorded all our conversations.
He won't make a single mistake. And so on. Sorry if I had known it was you, Jimmy. I would have told you so much sooner. Upon hearing this, Jimmy's expression changes, and he shoots Ash a piercing glare.
No, you're wrong, Mr. James. This is all a lie Gwyneth made up.
Jimmy, would you like to hear a recorded conversation I have that says otherwise?
Yes, please. Stop it.
I then play the audio for Jimmy where Ash was complaining non-stop.
Wow, I see. Thank you, Miss Gwinnett. Never thought he'd be saying stuff like this. No need for me to cover for him anymore. What? What are you talking about? You've been swiping office supplies, haven't you? What? Did you know we have surveillance cameras around the office? Maybe you thought no one checks them. There have been complaints about supplies disappearing or running out quickly. When we investigated, we found you were the one taking them. I was planning to question you about it soon, but now I'll just report this to the boss. Wait, what happens to me then? That's for the boss to decide. Don't know if you'll even be able to stay in your current department or the company for that matter. You can't. Oh, by the way, Miss Gwinnett, how about working for a company? We'd be better off with you than him.
Really? Is that okay?
It's fine. We'll likely have an opening soon.
Jimmy turned to face Ash.
I'd be delighted to be under Jimmy. I'll make sure not to get too familiar with you.
Don't worry about it.
You scum.
You asked me earlier what I'd do after leaving the hospital. Remember? Now it's my turn to ask. What will you do without a job?
Shut up.
If you listen to me, I might consider letting you and your mother-in-law be my personal servants.
Who would do that?
Oh, I see. Then you and your mother-in-law will be out on the streets.
So, if I become your servant, will you help us?
No way. I don't need a servant like you.
What?
So you have to try your best holding hands with your beloved mom.
And so the episode came to a close. Later on, Ash was questioned by the company about the missing supplies and found to be reselling them. He was effectively fired. It was questioned by the police. Now he's being supported by his mother-in-law's pension. Life's being tough. Even putting food on the table is a challenge. As for me, I started working under Jimmy. Although it took a bit to get back into the swing of things, I quickly adapted and became a valuable member of the team. Work is really enjoyable. I guess as long as I have my job, life is good. If I ever consider remarrying, I think I'll consult with someone first.
Life seemed to be going smoothly, or so we thought. Betty smirking next to my mother-in-law. Who could have seen this coming? My name is Polly. I'm 35 and work for a major corporation. My husband Emmett is a colleague, and we continue to work at the same company after getting married. My in-laws are kind and often look out for me, especially when I'm busy with work. The idea of multi-generational living came from them. Apparently, they had planned to give the land to Emmett, but we decided to build a new house on the property to avoid stepping on each other's toes. I was grateful for the suggestion and agreed to the multi-generational living arrangement. We renovated an abandoned guest house and moved in. Both of us had good jobs, so we have plenty of savings. We incorporated all of our wishes into the renovation. The guest house was old but had a good design, so we mostly just reinforced it. My in-laws were pleased with the outcome. After moving in, we'd enjoy tea together on weekends. Then, suddenly, my father-in-law collapsed. I heard he was rushed to the hospital, so I left work early. When I arrived, he was hooked up to numerous tubes.
Dad, hang in there. Wake up.
In the hospital room, Emmett, who had arrived before me, was desperately talking to his father. Both my mother-in-law and Leroy's family had arrived, and the room was filled with Emmett's cries and the sound of the heart monitor. A doctor came in and explained my father-in-law's condition. According to the doctor, he had suffered a stroke. He was in critical condition, on the brink of death, but they arranged for a transfer to a larger hospital. Then father-in-law went to the largest general hospital in the state. Despite the best efforts there, he never recovered. My father-in-law passed away without ever waking up. The sight of Emmett and Leroy sobbing uncontrollably still haunts me. My mother-in-law, having lost her beloved husband, became increasingly reclusive. For about 6 months, Emmett and I increased our work-from-home days to be with her as much as possible. But she insisted she was fine, so we gradually returned to our regular work schedules. In contrast, Betty started visiting my in-laws' house more frequently. She and Leroy had gotten married suddenly a year before my father-in-law passed away. It was a whirlwind romance leading to a quick marriage. After just 6 months of dating, Betty, who was only in her 2nd year of working, quit her job to become a housewife. My in-laws were thrilled about the birth of their grandchildren. They had prepared many gifts. Betty seemed pleased and would boast about it whenever we met at the main house. Emmett and I hadn't been blessed with children since our marriage, but we never felt pressured as we loved our jobs and had each other, and my in-laws never rushed us. Seeing this, Betty always seemed to smirk triumphantly. Moreover, it seemed that my father-in-law and Betty didn't get along. He was old-fashioned and often engaged in physical contact. It was usually innocent, like patting on the back or stroking the head, which I found comforting, but Betty seemed to feel differently. So, Betty avoided coming to my in-laws' house because she didn't like my father-in-law, and when she did come, she was cold to him. At first, my father-in-law would show up to see the grandkids, but he seemed to grow tired of her attitude. Eventually, he started avoiding Betty, staying in his room whenever she visited. And now Betty was visiting frequently, targeting times when we were at work. I had a bad feeling about it, but Emmett saw it differently.
Maybe she's just trying to keep Mom company. Mom's alone during the day, and she's happy to see the grandkids,
he said. Emmett had a point, so I pushed down my concerns and carried on with life. 6 months passed, and the anniversary of my father-in-law's death was approaching. We were called over by my mother-in-law and received shocking news.
You know Leroy changed jobs, right? But it seems he's not making much in terms of salary or bonuses. Betty seems to be struggling too.
We were puzzled by this sudden conversation.
So you two both have jobs, right? And no kids, so you have some flexibility. I'd like you to give the guest house to Leroy and his wife.
We were stunned. This had been Betty's plan all along. She must have spent the last 6 months convincing my mother-in-law. Indeed, Leroy had changed jobs about a year before my father-in-law passed away due to a layoff. It happened while Betty was pregnant, and the reason for layoff was downsizing. Leroy struggled to find a new job for about 3 months. Eventually, he took a job at a small company, thanks to a referral from my father-in-law. Emmett, who usually doesn't talk much about Leroy, seemed relieved. He must have been worried about Leroy's situation. It's true that our dual-income household has more financial flexibility, and it's also true that we don't have kids. But the suddenness of it all left us bewildered. Emmett expressed this to my mother-in-law.
It's hard to just give up the house we renovated.
I understand. That's why I'll cover the renovation costs.
With that, we were left speechless. My mother-in-law decided to give the money to Emmett in exchange for giving the house to Leroy. We needed to talk to Leroy to move things forward. So we arranged a meeting for the weekend. Little did we know we were in for another shock.
We've told Emmett and Polly that we plan to give you the guest house. Don't worry, brother-in-law and sister-in-law. If you give us the guest house, I'll take care of all the housework and caregiving for mother-in-law. Leave it to me.
Betty started speaking confidently, and Leroy seemed to agree.
Well, if you're going to go that far, we do have some financial flexibility, and if it's for the sake of living, we can't say no. But we can't move out immediately. We both have jobs, so we need to find a new place and move. Let's say we need 3 months. Leroy and Betty can move in after that.
I nodded at Emmett's words. My mother-in-law seemed to have no objections. If Betty was going to handle the housework and caregiving, I had no reason to oppose. But Betty's next words left us all stunned.
Wait, you guys are moving into the main house, right?
What? Not just my mother-in-law, but everyone in the room was shocked. We were left speechless, not understanding the meaning of her words. Ignoring our reactions, Betty continued excitedly.
So, you guys will live in the main house. I'll take care of your share of the housework and get a gratuity from you. That way, I'll have some income and you'll be relieved of chores. It's a win-win situation.
Here's how Betty laid it out. First, we would live with my mother-in-law in the main house. Leroy and his family would live in the guest house. Betty would come to the main house every day to do chores. In return, we would pay her. The guest house was mortgage-free, so no rent was needed. As for why she wouldn't live with my mother-in-law, she said it was easier to avoid conflicts and that the guest house was better suited for raising kids. I got a headache from her selfishness. It seems like this was news to my mother-in-law as well. She thought she would be living alone while Leroy's family moved into the guest house.
So, how much should we pay you in gratuity?
Emmett asked.
I knew you'd understand. You don't have to pay much since we're family. Maybe around $2,500. That should be enough. You guys get to relax. Mother-in-law gets to see the grandkids every day, and our lives get easier. Everything is settled. Isn't it perfect?
I couldn't understand why we should pay $2,500. Emmett was visibly shaking with anger. Leroy seemed surprised too.
Wait a minute, I didn't know about this gratuity thing,
he said. What? Really? But we're talking about it now, so it's okay, right? Betty answered, looking puzzled. Leroy sighed but didn't press the issue, suggesting he wasn't entirely against the idea.
Perfect, huh? Perfectly stupid,
Emmett said, making Betty's face tense up. Emmett continued talking.
Why should we not only give up the guest house, but also pay $2,500 a month? And since when is that a family rate?
Tears welled up in Betty's eyes. She muttered something and then responded, crying. Why can't you understand? Everyone benefits. Mother-in-law won't be lonely and you guys get to relax. I can't work outside because I have a baby, and this baby is the only one in this family. Aren't babies supposed to be raised by everyone?
Put the baby aside. You could use daycare,
Emmett said. Betty burst into tears, her shrill voice filling the room. Why would you say that? I can't send my son to such a barbaric place. What's wrong with wanting to be with him until he's old enough for preschool? Betty started sobbing like a child. Emmett and I watched in disbelief, but my mother-in-law seemed to sympathize with Betty. Betty has thought this through. I'm okay with living with you guys. If Betty takes care of the housework, it'll be easier for everyone. Family should help each other, right? It seems my mother-in-law had been completely won over by Betty in the past 6 months. Leroy, rubbing Betty's back, looked at us pleadingly. Betty was crying with her face down, but I saw a smile through the gaps in her fingers. Men don't understand the hardships of housework, but you get it, right? It'll be easier and cheaper for everyone, Betty said, looking at me. I responded with a smile. Yes, I agree with Emmett. Did you know? Housework for 2 people isn't that big of a deal. And $2,500, no offense, but I don't think your housework is worth that much. She seemed to have not expected a refusal. Betty stared at me, dumbfounded. Emmett sighed deeply and said to the 3 of them,
Fine, we'll move out of the guest house, but we're not moving into the main house. Do whatever you want with the guest house after we leave. You don't have to return the renovation costs. But from now on, no financial support. Figure it out yourselves.
Emmett left the room after saying that. I followed him, saying my goodbyes.
Polly, I'm sorry for the trouble. About the renovation costs, too.
Don't worry about it. Let's just find a new place and move out. We went straight to a real estate broker and started looking for a new home. Fortunately, we found a great place to live within a week. It's a luxury condominium with strict approval criteria. But after the real estate broker learned where we worked, he recommended we apply. We passed with flying colors and could move in a month. Leroy's family moved into the guest house after we left. But even with Leroy's income and mother-in-law's pension, they were struggling financially. As for Betty, she only did housework in the main house for about a month. After that, she left her child with someone else and went out, not even taking care of her own home. When we heard Betty's itemized $2,500 bill, by the way, we had a good laugh. $300 per person, multiplied by 6 family members, equaled $1,800. Additional charges for non-food expenses. The remaining $700 was pure gratuity for Betty, basically her allowance. Why on earth would we need to pay Betty's allowance? Emmett and I looked at each other and laughed at her ridiculous itemization. We later heard that Betty used to be a plant on a dating app. She continued this even after marriage to make some extra money, but Leroy found out and suspected her of cheating, so she quit. Since then, Leroy has forbidden Betty from working. As a result, Betty has no pocket money. So Betty thought she could get gratuity from us. Her plans for the money? Teas, spa treatments, and buying brand name items. We were amazed at her vanity. Still, Leroy has no plans to divorce her. We decided that after moving, we would only visit for New Year's celebrations and father-in-law's death anniversary. She sometimes hints at living together, but Emmett and I both brilliantly ignore it. Mother-in-law doesn't push too hard, perhaps sensing the awkwardness. In our new home, we decided to upgrade all our appliances. Robot vacuum, washing machine with dryer, and AI-controlled devices. All these cost less than 6 months of Betty's proposed gratuity. Housework became much easier, and we enjoyed our time more. Soon after moving, I found out I was pregnant. We'll be a family of 3 next year. I plan to continue working. So, how do I know about their current situation? Simple. Betty calls us almost weekly, hoping for our sympathy, which we don't have. Still, Betty didn't hesitate to call me, and I answered in a cheerful voice. I cheerfully told her, "Our child is expected to be a girl, so she won't be a playmate for your son. Plus, we plan to send her to daycare. We're also budgeting for her education, so we can't help with your childcare. Please manage on your own." I hung up while Betty was still talking. She called back several times, but I ignored her. We haven't told Betty or mother-in-law, but we've moved a plane ride away. Emmett accepted a promotion at the headquarters that he had previously declined. I'm also transferring to a different department at the headquarters. I'm grateful that I can take maternity and parental leave. Mother-in-law and Betty probably think we moved nearby because we left a local condominium brochure at mother-in-law's house. I wonder how Betty will react when she finds out the truth. Unless we visit them, we won't have to deal with them anymore. I secretly look forward to seeing their faces the next time we visit. After sipping some decaffeinated tea, I deleted mother-in-law and Betty's contact information. From now on, we'll focus on our important family, doing our best in housework, childcare, and, of course, our jobs.
Wait, just 20,000? You expect us to go on a honeymoon with that? Isn't that a bit low?
Exactly, Mom. Think this through. This is a celebration for your beloved son. If you can't cough up more money, we're fine with cutting ties. Fine, let's cut ties then. My name is Shelley. Recently, both my children got married and left the nest. I thought I could finally take a breather. My husband passed away when our daughter Selena was in college, and our son Matthew was in middle school. We all grieved, but we managed to get by. Selena went to a far-off college but offered to come back. I couldn't let her do that. She graduated and got a job where she was, met someone, got married, and now has a child. The real challenge was Matthew. Losing a father figure during his rebellious teenage years was tough, but I did my best to raise him. I think he turned out fine. He went to private high schools and colleges, which was financially challenging, but he found a job and got married. Mom, my job is close to home. We can live together until I get transferred. I know you worry. That's nice, but don't push yourself. Your happiness is my happiness. Matthew is a considerate, kind son. We've had many conversations since he became an adult. I didn't just spoil him. I taught him chores. He's my pride and joy. I'm sure he'll be a supportive husband. I'm content if I can see Selena and Matthew once in a while. Their happiness is what matters most.
When kids get married, there's not much parents can do. Interfering would make me an annoying mother-in-law. Times have changed. We can't be too involved in our children's marriages. True, it's sad but necessary. That's what I discuss with my friends. So I try not to interfere too much with Selena and Matthew. But a parent's heart wants to help. So I gave Selena $20,000 as a wedding gift and another $20,000 for her honeymoon. Mom, are you sure? You saved up too. You don't have to strain yourself. It's fine. If you don't use it, save it. I've got my own savings. Thanks, Mom. I'll definitely repay this kindness. Selena was grateful and brought back souvenirs from her honeymoon. When she gave them to me, she told me about her travels. I was happy and wanted to do the same for Matthew. So I planned to give him $20,000 for the wedding and another $20,000 for the honeymoon. Wait, this is it? It's not enough. Our wedding cost $60,000, you know. Exactly, Mom. What are you thinking? This is nowhere near enough. Don't act like you're some great parent with this measly amount. Unlike Selena and her husband, Matthew and his wife Jeannie were full of complaints. I'm sorry, but this is all I can afford. You had your own savings for the wedding, right? What? Young people these days don't have savings. We're always paying for the elderly. Mom, don't you watch the news? We're struggling here. Maybe you should educate yourself. I know, but if that's the case, you didn't have to spend $60,000 on a wedding. Wow, how cruel. A wedding is a woman's lifelong dream. It's the one day I get to be the star. Exactly, and you say it like that? Are you looking down on us? No, that's not what I meant. Jeannie starts to fake cry dramatically, and Matthew defends her. For some reason, they act as if I've said something terrible. So are you saying my parents should also contribute money? That's ridiculous. Why should the bride's parents have to struggle? Isn't it the groom's parents who should handle everything? Matthew has no savings. It's been tough for him. Are you exploiting him because you're a single mom? I've never done that. I haven't taken any money from him since he started working. I've never interfered with how he spends his money. If he has no savings, maybe he spent it on his hobbies? That's not true. I just ate out and went drinking with friends. That shouldn't deplete my salary. Exactly. Besides, you have all the latest appliances at home. Those were gifts from my daughter for Mother's Day. See, you've been exploiting Matthew too. Poor Matthew, being taken advantage of because he's kind. In reality, I've never asked Matthew for anything. Some of my friends do take living expenses from their adult children who still live at home. I know young people have it tough, so I never took money from Matthew. I've managed on my own salary and savings. Oh, poor Matthew, raised by such a terrible mother. And now you insult my parents too. You're the worst mother-in-law. Mom, apologize to Jeannie. Show your sincerity with money. We'll be back in a few days, so increase our honeymoon allowance. I'm your precious son, right? Please, Mom. With that, Matthew leaves with a smug smile, hugging Jeannie's shoulders. I'm left alone, disappointed, wondering why they would say such things. I've never exploited anyone. I've given as much as I could afford and thought I'd done my best. Selena and her husband never complained. They even thanked me. I know some parents give more, but this is my limit. I thought I'd raised him well, but to be told all this. Just then, Selena calls to say she sent a package. I end up venting to her, and she says, Mom, Matthew's lost it. I knew he was sheltered, but he's gotten worse since dating Jeannie. You should free yourself, Mom. Her words clear the fog before my eyes. Matthew is an adult now. He is not a child I need to protect. There is no need to be spoiled anymore. A few days later, Matthew and Jeannie return. They sit across from me at the living room table, smirking. So you've had time to think. How much more are you giving us? Exactly. Our future relationship depends on this. Depending on the amount, we might even give you some hotel amenities. They clearly haven't reflected on their behavior. They must think I'll give them more money. So I calmly say, I understand how you feel, but I can't give you any more money. In fact, I've lost the desire to give you even the $20,000. What? Mom, what are you saying? That's fine. We can cut ties. All right, let's cut ties then. They clearly didn't expect me to agree. They visibly panic. Just as they're about to say something, Selena comes out from the room behind me. I've been listening and you two are just awful. Why are you here, sis? Hi, long time no see. Enough with that attitude. Aren't you grateful? Especially you, Matthew. Mom supported you through your rebellious phase, sent you to private schools, and even let you live at home as an adult. What's with your attitude? But she's my mom, that's her job, and I've seen online that other parents give more. Exactly. The groom's parents should do more. Otherwise, you won't even get to see your grandchildren. Well, Jeannie, I wouldn't want to see any child raised by people as unreasonable as you. What? Even if we have a child, you'd still feel that way? I wouldn't want to see a child raised by people like you. I prefer not to associate with strange people. That's rude. Let's go, Jeannie. There's no talking to these people. Our words seem to fall on deaf ears. Matthew and Jeannie left, just like that. Selena and I look at each other and let out a deep sigh. Life was peaceful after that. Until a few months later when Matthew called, crying. Mom, help me. I don't know what happened, but I'm out of money. I can't pay my bills and I'm getting notices for electricity and gas. I can't even pay rent. I'm going to get kicked out. Turns out they'd been spending their salaries however they pleased. It's not like I had any naive ideas that things would definitely work out. They had no idea how much it actually costs to live. When I lived at home, I never had to worry about this stuff. My house is big and Jeannie's is even bigger. We never had to think about money, so why is it a problem now in this tiny rental? Matthew, did you ever think about rent and other expenses? Did you consider how much of your salary goes to fixed costs? What? I never had to think about that at home. Why is it an issue now? Because I was paying for everything when you lived at home. You seriously never thought about this? Matthew sounded shocked. I couldn't help but feel drained. How could they not even know the basics of what it costs to live? You should know about rent and utilities even if you lived at home. Haven't you talked to friends who live on their own? I've told you many times not to waste electricity. I heard from friends, but I thought they were just poor. I thought the electricity thing was just a matter of discipline. What have you been listening to? I've talked about utility bills many times. I thought I was competent enough to earn without worrying about that stuff. Sure, Matthew went to top schools, and from what I heard, so did Jeannie. But they were only academically smart. That's why you don't understand the value of $20,000. Maybe I raised you wrong. That's it. What about the $20,000? If I had that, I could pay off all my overdue bills. Can you give it to me, Mom? No way. What? I had to be firm with Matthew. Indulging him now would do no good. I had to be strict. Remember, you were the ones who wanted to cut ties. I'm not helping you anymore. That's the last thing I can do for you as a parent. From now on, you're on your own. With that, I hung up the phone. Matthew kept calling back, but I deliberately ignored it. He and Jeannie wouldn't understand unless I took a stand. Luckily, they both work and don't have kids yet. Even if they fall behind on bills, they won't get kicked out immediately. I thought they'd catch up and start saving in a few months, but I was wrong. When Matthew couldn't reach me, he contacted Selena. From what Selena told me, they blamed each other for their financial woes, and it didn't stop there. They said the same thing to Jeannie's parents, who were understandably furious. From now on, you're on your own. Even if you have kids, don't expect any gifts from us. They kicked them out. Still, Matthew and Jeannie blamed each other. The result? A quick divorce. Right before their honeymoon, after a $60,000 wedding. Now their friends are distancing themselves, calling them wedding gift thieves. In the end, they're cut off from their families and have no friends to rely on. Matthew tried calling Selena, but she ignored him too. I have no idea what he's up to now, but I doubt he's changed. That's on him, and there's nothing more I can do. I'm planning to sell my now too big for one house. I'll use that money to buy a senior-friendly condo. That way, I can live a supportive community life. And no, I have no plans to tell Matthew where I'm moving. Not helping him anymore is my final act as his parent. In the long run, it's for his own good. I plan to live happily on my own from now on.